use the raise hand function so I can call on folks and make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak. We'll start with a motion and second for approval of the minutes of the regular commission meeting of February 10th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And would you lead us through a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioners Alexander,
Present.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
and Saruda.
Aye.
Thank you.
Pam, do I need to change my vote to aye? I said present.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll ask Curtis to deliver the Executive Director's report in his remarks. I note that one of the highlights today will be talking about the accomplishments of some of our commissioners for whom this is their last meeting, and I look forward to that discussion.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, Commissioners. I would like to first acknowledge the Port's monthly safety champions. As I think you know, we've had just a really outstanding year in safety at the Port, not without incident, but we're pushing toward zero, and that's really due to the leadership of people on the front line, Port staff working every day to watch out for each other, watch out for themselves, and watch out for our contractors and business partners. So I want to recognize these four today, just outstanding work in their respective business units, and I'm grateful for everything the team is doing to help us get closer to zero incidents. So thank you, safety champions. And with that, Stan, I wonder if you could share a safety message with us today.
Sure can. Thanks, Curtis. Before I get to my safety message, though, for this month, I thought I would mention that this Friday marks the 1-year anniversary of the Port's work from home edict to prevent the spread of COVID-19 amongst employees. Since that time, many essential workers have returned to their work sites to support the Port's mission and construction projects while using COVID-19 safety protocols. Still, others continue to work safely while remote, and we continue to learn and adapt to the latest safety and health guidance provided by authorities having jurisdiction. Now for my safety message for the month. I am happy to announce that the Port of Portland will be supporting the 5th annual National Ladder Safety Month taking place this month of March. This important national initiative will heighten awareness and promote the safe use of ladders. Every year, more than 300 people die in ladder-related accidents, and thousands suffer disabling injuries. Without better safety education, training, and continuous innovation in product design, we will continue to see far too many fatalities. The Port has experienced itself 2 ladder safety incidents in the last 30 days. Both were minor injuries from falls while descending the ladder and missing the last rung. National Ladder Safety Month will heighten awareness, reinforce safety training, and educate both homeowners and working professionals. At the Port of Portland, our employees and construction partners understand the dangers working from ladders present and commonly have a ladder's last policy. Most industries and professional construction companies have significant potential exposure and have resources to engineer out ladder use. However, at homes, it is a different situation, and most in this audience know of someone who fell off a ladder and was injured. Ladder Safety Month is the only movement dedicated exclusively to the promotion of ladder safety at home and at work. Help us bring awareness to the importance of the safe use of ladders through resources, training, and a national dialogue. And ladder safety education and training is available free of charge for all types of ladders at www.laddersafetytraining.org. Curtis, that's my safety message for this month.
Terrific. Thank you, Stan. Really appreciate it. I appreciate the belly button rule. As Commission President Kupro-Comas mentioned, this is a bittersweet day for us. It is the last commission meeting for Commissioners Pierce and Saruda, who have both served the Port since 2012. It's been a really remarkable 8 years for the Port and filled with just a lot of challenges, but also incredible achievement. So I'd like to just speak to a few of those here and note how remarkable an 8 years it's been. We undertook in the beginning of the 8-year period a general fund sustainability push and really put the general fund on stable footing for the first time in many years, thanks in part to the leadership of Commissioners Pierce and Tsuruda. With the specific help of Commissioner Pierce, we helped shape the future at Terminal 6, setting a strategic vision, bringing partners to the table, and eventually returning container service to Portland. And that service is going gangbusters now. We're just extremely grateful for the work on T6. An item that has a soft spot in my heart for obvious reasons. The team went out and recruited and hired a new executive director. And I'm certainly appreciative for that piece of work. We kicked off the PDX Workplace Initiative, really seeking to change the way we think about people working inside the airport. We started PDX Next, building a remarkable new airport for the next generation. We're about a third of the way through that program now, and I'm just really pleased with the progress we've made and the way it started with a vision back in 2012, 2013. We secured air service to Reykjavik and Frankfurt and London and Mexico City, as well as cargo service to Asia, something that Commissioner Tsuruda was personally able to help us with, engaging both here and abroad to build partnerships with airlines and connect Portland to markets in Europe and Asia. We had large developments at FedEx and Amazon out at Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park, really moving that park from mostly empty to mostly full. We began significant development at Gresham Vista, including Subaru and SPECT developments, and what I think is a remarkable new development with our partners at Colas that really, I think, is going to create new opportunities for us, unlike any we've seen before. And importantly, in the last few years in particular, the Commission leadership in developing a social equity policy and leading us into a vision of shared prosperity that will really change the way the port thinks about its work in the community. So I'm really grateful for all of the work the two of you have brought to the Commission, grateful for your guidance and your engagement, and also for your friendship and kindness. The staff has really enjoyed working with you. You will certainly be missed. We normally, as you know, would have a bit of a ceremony in the Commission chambers, and we'd hand you Pendleton blankets. We will be mailing you Pendleton blankets, and I'm sorry we can't have the celebration in person, but I do want to thank you personally for everything you brought to the Commission. And I know after my comments, I think, Madam President, you may have others who would like to comment, but I'll roll through here and continue my Executive Director comments, but want to thank you both personally for everything you've done for the Port. I do want to note two new appointments to the Port Commission. Ketan Sampat, who is the Chief Technology and Product Officer of the Providence Chain Network, and Stuart Strader, a member of ILW Local 8 Labor Relations Committee, were both confirmed by the Senate last week, and their terms will begin next week on March 15th. I do want to also thank the congressional delegation. Oregon's delegation has been incredible in support of the stimulus bill, which passed the Senate over the weekend, and I expect will pass the House today. It includes $8 billion for airports in the American Rescue Plan. The bill is expected to be signed by the president before 3/14, when current benefits expire. So we're really grateful for the leadership of our delegation in regards to the American Rescue Plan. We don't know yet exactly how much PDX will receive in the bill, but we're grateful for the support, given that current passenger traffic is now down in around 65% down from a year ago. So very thankful for the leadership of the congressional delegation. Finally, EPA announced a major milestone last month. The federal agency has reached cleanup agreements covering all of the Portland Harbor Superfund site. I should have included that in the achievements of the past 8 years. We've really made great leaps in addressing the pollution, historic pollution in Portland Harbor, and EPA's move here has really helped solidify what this is going to look like. They finalized a new agreement with 12 parties, including the port, to cover the final area of the Superfund site that requires active cleanup. And designing cleanup is still going to take 3 to 4 years to develop, and then the parties are expected to sign new agreements to conduct active cleanup, which includes decontaminating and cleaning up the site through dredging or capping contaminated sediment with clean soil. And active cleanup itself, the timelines are always long on this work. We think it's between 10 and 15 years to complete, and probably will cost in the range of $1 billion across all parties. So with that, Madam President, I'll conclude my remarks and thank you for your indulgence this morning.
Thank you for that report, Curtis, and I want to echo the thanks and gratitude that you provided to the two commissioners who are leaving the commission. I have appreciated working with Commissioner Saruta and Pierce, their questions, their thoughtfulness around decisions, and I agree with you completely. A lot of the work that has been done in the time of their service is due to that leadership and engagement on our commission, which I appreciate very much, and I regret that we can't be together to have an appropriate send-off, and thank you for your service in person. I'll open the floor for other comments before I take a motion and second to accept the Executive Director's report.
Madam President, I would like to also echo your comments and Curtis's comments in offering thanks to Commissioners Saruta and Pierce. When I joined the Port Commission, I took time to look at the individuals who I'd had the opportunity to work with, and all I can say is that you are known by the company you keep, and the time that I have been on this commission has really served to have people understand how valuable an opportunity it's been and the quality of thought leadership and service to community that each of you brings, and nobody embodies that more than our two departing commissioners. So I wish you well. I thank you for the strength of association on this commission and with you has brought to me personally, and I hope that our paths will continue to intersect at some point in the future.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Halloran?
Yes, thank you. I want to join the chorus. And I know we'll be losing two incredible colleagues who have been, I think, a great asset to the commission and to the state and the broader community that utilizes all the port's assets. Just great insight I've learned from both of you, and I will miss you on the commission, but like Michael, I hope our paths continue to cross. I also welcome our two new commissioners. I know we'll have an opportunity to do that, but in terms of numbers, there'll be not skip much of a beat, but I want to thank you both, Tom and Linda, and for engaging me personally and bringing me up to speed on the issues, and you will be missed.
Thank you. With that, I'll take a motion and second to approve the Executive Director's report.
Can I simply say one or two words of thanks? This is Tom.
Of course.
Before you do that, thank you very much. Thank you, Curtis, and for your kind words. And also thank you all, the Port Office staff, completely professional, a bunch of people, and also the fellow commissioners for the 8 years of my sheer pleasure working with you. Before I leave, I just wanted to say the following three things that I have discovered, and nothing new to me, but initially I was very, very elated to discover these things. The three things that will come to my mind after having worked on this commission for 8 years. A, professionalism. Well, that which can be found in any sector, because I represent, or I come from a very corporate sector, and many people who work in that sector or industry are also consummate professionals as well. But on top of being professional, what I would like to add is the notion of selfless. Now, what do I mean by that? In the corporate world, Curtis, you're from there, and Alice, you work there, and we all know what the corporate world is. But in addition to being professional in corporate industry world, basically the bottom line is always the money. And that's what my experience was. That includes the procurement and also retainment of a professional people on the staff or this and that. But here at the port, whether the staff or the people who work on the commission, somehow that's not the reason that they are being here. Somehow they have this sheer joy, a purpose of serving. And those are the three things: professionalism and selfless, and the sheer joy of serving for the purpose that we share. And those are three things that I learned, and I completely enjoyed being part of. But anyway, thank you very much, and it's been a great 8 years for me, and I wish you good luck going forward, and hopefully we will stay in touch. Thanks again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Pierce.
Oh, yes. I would just like to say it's been such an honor to serve on the port and to watch, all the changing situations we've had to deal with over the last, I guess I've been around for 8.5 years now. And I remember one of the first things I was tapped on to help with was kind of evaluating the concessions coming into the airport. That was way back in 14 and probably 2014, 15. And the care that the team brought to continuing to make the airport such a great place, such a unique experience. And that has just been watching the team continue to do that. I just have been amazed at the professionalism, the expertise, and even more recently, who would have predicted this financial crisis that we're in right now, and to see the leadership and the thought and how people-centric and thoughtful process that everything has gone through. It's just been an amazing experience, and I will miss you all, and feel very confident that the port's in the best hands possible with the leadership and the team and the people I've met and gotten a chance to work with. So really, really appreciate the experience, and we'll miss you all. And I miss not being together, but this has worked out really well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. With that, I'll call for a motion and second to approve the Executive Director's report.
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Pam, would you lead us through the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
and Saruda.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move into public comment. We did not receive any public comment for this month's meeting, but we have a request for live testimony by Ana Gonzalez Munoz, Latino Network Director of Community Engagement and Leadership Development. If you're on, I think you're on. Please go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I'm here. Good morning, members of the Board of Commissioners and Madam Chair. My name is Ana Gonzalez Munoz, and I have been a member of the PDX Community Advisory Committee since 2018, sitting on the Environmental Justice seat, which has been an honor, by the way. When I first joined the PDX CAC back in 2018, there was a live testimony presented to us by a PDX worker asking for fair wages, basic benefits like an affordable insurance packet, and better working conditions. That was more than 2 years ago. Back in October 2020, a similar testimony was presented to us once more. We heard that PDX workers describe that low wages means that they are at risk of losing their housing, that they have to deal with illness without getting health care, that they have to skip meals, that they can't afford the simplest things such as Christmas presents or birthday presents for their family, or even take a short vacation. We have heard that this poverty disproportionality impacts workers and communities of color. And we have heard that PDX workers have been raising these concerns for more than 6 years. This is why the majority of the CAC members voted to support the Airport Worker Bill of Rights, presented to us in January 2021, proposed by PDX workers. The Bill of Rights contains 3 elements: fair wages, which is $3 above the minimum wage, affordable quality health insurance, and additional paid time off. These are fair and reasonable expectations. Airport service workers are considered essential and frontline workers at the airport. The PDX wage standard presented to you in December is a step in the right direction, but more needs to be done. When the new requirement goes into effect in July, airport service contractors will be required to pay employees at least $15 per hour. That will be only $1 above the minimum wage and will not benefit many airport service workers currently paid poverty wages. Considering the impressive profits airlines have made in recent years, the cash payments that they have made to their stakeholders, and the significant public subsidies they have received as part of the COVID relief, the airlines can find ways to pay for contracted workers, enough that they can afford the basic cost of living. What PDX workers are asking for is comparable to what our neighboring airport authorities have established, such as San Jose Airport, Oakland, San Francisco, and LAX. One of the values we have at Latino Network, the agency where I work, is accountability, our commitment to excellence and results. That's why I'm here in support of PDX workers. I am committed to represent the underrepresented and to amplify their voices demanding what is right for them. I want to recognize the effort the Portland staff have put into crafting this updated policy, and consistent with what I understand commissioners have called for in recent months. I urge the Port to continue the momentum in developing a policy that addresses all 3 parts of the Bill of Rights concepts, which is health insurance, paid time off, and wages of at least $3 above minimum wage. In solidarity with PDX workers, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony and for coming to talk to us today, as well as for your service on the committee. We need voices at the table, and we appreciate that you've come to talk to us today and that you've raised your voice in the committee, as have other committee members. It looks like we have commissioners who want to respond, so I'll call on Commissioner Nimi first.
Thank you, President Cuprocomos. I just wanted to also say thank you so much to Ana Gonzalez Munoz for your volunteering to be on the CAC and the time and effort that takes, as well as coming before us today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'll thank you again for the testimony. I will say on behalf of myself and honestly, I know a number of commissioners, this is an important issue that we'll continue to work on. We understand the urgency of the need, and we'll continue to work with the Port to look at all ways that we can move this forward. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the general discussion items, and I'll have Kristen Leonard introduce the first item, please.
Terrific. Good morning, Madam President and commissioners. And I want to do a little shout out. I wish we were in person to say thank you to Commissioners Saruda and Pierce. You will be missed, and my hope is that at some point in time you'll have the opportunity to see our efforts in motion with a new interstate bridge, and that's what we really want to talk about today. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Greg Johnson. Greg was recruited by the Oregon Department of Transportation and the Washington State Department of Transportation to lead the bi-state interstate bridge replacement program. Greg is a licensed professional engineer with a distinguished career both in the public and private sector, working on major infrastructure projects in both Maryland and Michigan, and now we're really excited to have wooed Greg to the Northwest to help us work through this significant project on our horizon. So we thought it would be valuable to give you an overview, have kind of Greg explain how this project is coming together, give a sense of timelines and all of the work that's being done to really dig in and figure out how to replace the interstate bridge. So with that, I will turn it over to Greg.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and good morning, Madam President, members of the Commission, and Executive Director Robin Hold. So, as Kirsten noted, I am the Interstate Bridge Replacement Administrator, leading a team of professionals that are looking at what is the best solution to a 104-year-old bridge and a 63-year-old bridge. So that's the crux of our problem. We have old infrastructure and old technology. And I know you guys as a group that owns and operates extensive infrastructure understand the need to renew it and replace it appropriately. So I'm going to run through this real quick, but one thing I want to say is I am one of your customers. So I fly back to Michigan on a regular basis, and I fly through PDX. And as I've told Kristen on several occasions, it is always a pleasurable experience flying through PDX, all the way from parking to the amenities in the airport. So thank you. So next slide, please. So the question that we are seeking to answer is, why do we need to replace the interstate bridge? So I like to focus on the fact that this bridge is a connection between people and jobs. It supports local jobs and families. It's a vital trade route, not only for both states, but regionally, nationally, and international, as I-5, Interstate 5 is the only West Coast direct connection between Mexico and Canada. So that places it in a very unique position and in a very important position. So as I said, one of the spans is over 100 years old. I think this is its 104th year birthday this year. And generally you'd celebrate something being 104 years old, but in this case, it's old technology and it is at risk. So I'm sure most of you know about the potential for the Cascadia subduction to move and create an earthquake of significant magnitude that would possibly damage or incapacitate the bridge. So once again, that would be a crippling blow to the regional economy in both states. So that is one of the primary reasons for this this bridge to be replaced. But also, the bridge is experiencing over 10 hours a day of congested conditions. Even during this pandemic, when some traffic loads have dropped, you still see congestion that is delaying people and getting their days started or ended on a sour note. So we are trying to find ways to address those issues. So the program is committed to finding that solution that takes into account all of our partners' needs and concerns and make it a solution that's just not for today, but something that will last into the future. So modern bridge construction, the anticipated life of a bridge is 75 years. So with great maintenance and care, it can be 100 years. So we're talking about a bridge that will be here beyond our lifetimes and potentially beyond the lifetime of our children. So this is important for the region to come together and decide what things they want to see in this program. So we have the tagline of a modern connection for a growing community. And that's one of the important things. Infrastructure complements growth economically. If you don't have good infrastructure, your economic growth patterns will eventually lag and go down if you don't have the right critical infrastructure that will attract businesses and will maintain them here in the area. So next slide. So this program has a $50 million projection from both states, and we are operating under a memorandum of intent signed by both Governors Brown and Inslee back in 2019. And we also have an oversight committee called the Bi-State Legislative Committee that we meet with on a regular basis that consists of legislators, both representatives and senators from both states, equally sharing the burden. And we share with them everything that we are doing and that we are projecting to do and take guidance and feedback from them. So next slide. So that is a picture of me when I had hair. So that was my COVID look. So I've cut my hair and I'm ready for business to get this thing done. So once again, we have a coordinated leadership that helps and gives input. Kristen generously sits and represents the Port of Portland on our executive steering group. And you'll see that first list of organizations they comprise our executive steering group. So we have all of the transportation interests represented in that group. So once again, I was hired as a program administrator to lead this replacement program. I was happily doing what I was doing, and this opportunity came along to make a difference in a community that struggled the first time when this failed, and some of the skill sets needed, I think I possess to create coalitions to move this thing forward. So that's why I am 2,400 miles away from my home in Michigan and here with an apartment in the lovely city of Portland. So we are also working closely with our federal partners, Federal Transit Authority and Federal Highway Administration, permitting agencies such as the Coast Guard and Army Corps of Engineers, as well as state and local officials, tribal governments, community stakeholders, and the public. So we have some extensive outreach that I'll talk about later. Next slide. So one of the key things that caught my interest in talking to both the Secretary of WashDOT as well as the Director of ODOT was the changing nature of both of these DOTs. They recognized some of the failings in the past, and in an effort to recognize that and not repeat failures of the past, they have committed to centering equity on this program. So we are looking at that as one of our primary North Stars, and we're engaging the community, elevating voices of historically marginalized communities in the process. And actually our equity advisory group that I'll touch on a little bit later, they help us both in our processes as well as our outcomes to ensure that the equity lens is being applied to them. So our commitment is not to further any continued harm to these communities and make sure that they share in the benefits such as direct jobs and contracting for this program. Next slide. So this is our timeline, and as you can see to the far left, that reflects the Columbia River Crossing planning effort that ended in 2014 with a negative vote on funding. We had that program had come along a long ways and had reached a record of decision, and with that negative vote, that basically pushed us to a limbo period until the governors got together and said, yeah, this needs to happen. We need to make this happen. So 2019 was an official restart. And right now we are in the middle of the planning and environmental process. We are hoping to receive a new record of decision by sometime in 2024, for which then we will start hard design and break ground in 2025. It's anticipated that with the staging, that the bulk of this work will take place over a 5-year time period and have a bridge open for use in 2030. So, and there'll still be some other ancillary work that will have to go along. But you can see along the bottom, community engagement is going to be a facet throughout this program. Whether you're planning this or talking about what this is going to look like or actually designing or constructing it, we need to make sure community voices are heard in the process. So that's our commitment for engagement. Next slide, please. So this semi-complicated document is how we are structured. And you will see along the bottom is the equity advisory group that I spoke of, the community advisory group, and the executive steering group, which Kristen sits on along with other transportation partners in the area. These three groups give us advice, oversight, and input into our processes and into final products. So they report and give input to my program administration team, and we use the equity advisory group once again as that lens to make sure that everything we're doing is centering equity. Off to the right, you will see those other decision makers with jurisdictional authority. So those are permitting agencies as well as some funding agencies like our federal partners. Once again, we have to talk to Federal Aviation Administration because once again, we are not seeking to build a bridge that's going to interfere with both operations at PDX nor Pearson Airfield. So those are that's a key part of the insight that we have to gain from those permitting agencies. But finally, we will transmit updates and as well as recommendations and decisions up to the Bi-State Legislative Committee for feedback and final approval. We want to make sure that we are keeping the Bi-State Legislative team informed as best possible. We do not want at the end of this for folks to say, well, you didn't tell me this, or I was uninformed on that. So we're trying to be overly communicative, if at all possible. So I see a question, Mr. Saruta.
Yes, I don't want to interrupt you, so I can wait until you're finished, or
Okay.
I can ask questions now. All up to you.
So I have a segment at the end where you guys can engage me with questions. So why don't we wait until that? I have just a couple more slides, and then we can engage in questions. So next slide, please. So once again, one of the foundational pieces that we are working on now is the creation of a new purpose and need and vision and values. And we're hoping to take that to the bi-state legislative group in May, towards the end of May, for their final buy-in. We have both the Equity Advisory Group and the Community Advisory Group are working furiously to give input and help shape what that document looks like. So we are also these recommendations, and as well as input from the public and feedback from Bi-State Ledge, will help inform what these important program elements look like. So once we get purpose and need, vision and values, then we start looking at what are the alternatives to cross this river. Will a tunnel be feasible? What type of bridge will be feasible? We'll start talking about how many lanes, what type of transit will go across this bridge. So those are the important elements that once we have purpose and need, we can compare all of these alternatives against purpose and need and see which one scores out best. Next slide. So we have been doing extensive outreach, and I didn't mention that we did outreach to put community members on both the Equity Advisory Group and the Community Advisory Group. We advertised back in November and early December. We had over 500 folks interested for a total of 14 seats on those advisory groups. But our engagement is continuous. We have a website, so if you're interested in keeping up with the program, go to interstatebridge.org. But we have online open house that we completed in February, interactive survey, which we had over 9,000 participants, as well as 14,000 comments that we are trying to parse through. So this is a robust effort to make sure that the communities are engaged and aware and giving their input. So next slide. So this is the community feedback. So 9,000 participants just in that interactive community survey, with close to 14,500 open-ended comments. So we're reviewing that. But one of the commonalities that we're hearing, we did an initial survey of folks back in November. Two of the primary things that come to the forefront are congestion and travel reliability. And then that gets followed by earthquake vulnerability of the existing structures. So those are the things we're hearing. Once again, we are putting all of these comments, and you will see them in a format on our website that will make sense, so folks will not have to go through 15,000 comments to understand what the community is feeling. All right, next slide. So once again, this is some of our key milestones. We talk about purpose and need, vision and values. We also start entering into evaluating alternatives this summer. In the fall, we're going to finalize our range of alternatives. In 2021, we narrow the alternatives down to a locally preferred alternative, and we start working towards a new record of decision. And in 2024, we start advancing some final design. We recognize that this is probably going to be not one large contract. We're probably going to have upwards of 15 to 25 different contracts to make sure we are giving minority and women-owned businesses opportunities to be prime on portions of this project. But this is our key milestones and some of the work elements that you will see us working on going into the very near future. So next slide, please. We are to questions. So I am at your service to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Go ahead, Commissioner Saruta.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, for a very, very informative presentation. I have three questions. Wait a minute. Am I being blocked here? Oops. Oh, here you go. Three questions. One more or less professional questions or scientific questions, and one more or less an ancillary question to your presentation. So I'm going to start with the number three, the easiest one. You said you are domiciled currently here in Portland in an apartment, but you're from the beautiful state of Michigan, over 2,200 miles away. And during the 22 years I worked and lived in New York City, one of the conversations always centered around which winter more severe, New York or Michigan? Do you miss the winter in Michigan?
After seeing the overcast and rain all winter here in Portland, I did miss Michigan winters. So the precipitation has a tendency to be a little more solid in Michigan in the winter. But I tell you, you could not beat the last summer here in Portland. It was beautiful. So
right, I agree with that. The two other questions. One is earlier in your slide, you talked about one of the premises of this whole project being not to further, or correct me if I picked up the wrong vocabulary here, but something to the extent of not to further continued harms of the existing situation. What are those harms that are now being experienced in terms of this interstate bridge situation?
So several things happened when Interstate 5 was initially sited in the Albina neighborhood. This divided the community. It took viable homes and businesses out, and the Vanport flood had already migrated African Americans to Albina, and then along 10 years later, here comes the interstate, severed the community, and now we see gentrification happening in that community. So what we want to do is make sure we recognize that minorities nor women businesses had any role in building the initial I-5. So that community took the brunt of the impacts and received none of the benefits. So we want to recognize that and make sure that we are cognizant of that history and that we are not repeating that history, that we are involving them. I-5 is already there. I-5 is not going to get moved to another location, but there are things we can do to make sure that we are not creating more greenhouse gases and pollution and causing more asthma cases in the corridor which we exist. We have to make sure that we don't harm downtown Vancouver, where the interstate is right in their front yard. So This is something that we are taking seriously. One of the other things is the view shed. Folks love to look out to the east and see Mount Hood. And, you know, as we're building a taller bridge, folks have already expressed a concern about that being a potential harm, that no longer will they have the great vista of views of the mountains. So there are some things that we're trying to do to make sure that we are listening and taking those potential harms and mitigating them as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Very clear. My final question, which is pretty quick. Also, in one of the presentation slides towards the very end, you said that the construction expected to begin in or around 2025. And once that happens, you know, based upon your professional experience and knowledge, what kind of a endeavor is that going to be in terms of a total length of time for completion of the bridge? Is that 10-year endeavor or 5-year or 3-year? What kind of you know, I guess a total endeavor is that going to be once construction begins?
We think overall we project 7 years, but we're going to put incentives and disincentives to hurry the contractor along while still maintaining quality. So right now, we think it's going to be 7 years for the total program with all of the interchanges, all of the local road connections, the bike and walking paths, all of those things to be completed, the landscaping. We think that's going to be 7 years worth of work. But once again, we're going to try and incentivize to crunch that time into something that will be more acceptable for folks who are traveling through the corridor. We're going to maintain traffic through the corridor. We cannot send all of that traffic over to 205. Right. So that in itself is a good thing, but it also slows down the construction as you have to now do things part with. So, but those are some of the trade-offs that are being looked at.
I understand. Thank you. Thanks for giving me the time to ask these questions. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Commissioner O'Halloran?
Thank you. I just want to applaud the fact that you've been put in this role, Mr. Johnson, and wish you every success. I think it's really important that we have one single person to coordinate the multitude of moving parts. And as you know, the impact on transportation and commerce is immense. It's wonderful to see the focus on the community and the impact there. But I think that truckers have been using 97 to divert going from the south in California to Seattle, even though it's notably longer distance. But the congestion makes it still worth that. And so those aren't environmentally great options, but I think it's awesome to have someone with your background and experience to coordinate and think through this and learn from our history but really to look forward into the future for what this project can mean. And so I stand ready to help you in any way possible, but am rooting for your success in this project as we need it.
Well, thank you so much. And you're absolutely right that the congestion, this is the most congested spot on I-5 in the region. And this does cause a lot of folks to do weird things as far as avoiding it. Sometimes folks will go on neighborhood streets and jump back on to try and jump the queue. And we are not looking to build a tremendous amount of lanes, because once again, at the north end of this, there are 3 lanes. At the south end, there are 3 lanes. So what we're looking to do is build something that will operate more efficiently and effectively. So those may involve having merge weave lanes that are separated from the through lanes of traffic, so that traffic can flow laminarly, and these merge weave lanes or auxiliary lanes will take the brunt of trucks getting up to speed, of people movements to access the interchanges. So that's one of the thoughts that we're looking at to make this operate more effectively. We're also looking to make this a smart bridge that will have technology, not only that can tell somebody in Salem or in Tacoma about the condition of the bridge itself. So having sensors that will say, did you know there's a crack developing here? Did you know that some of your coating on your steel elements may be peeling? So we want to make this bridge have just a tremendous amount of technology that will make it smarter and be able to operate if there's an accident, move people quickly to another lane without having to go out and put cones or barrels or something to shift traffic. So those are some of the ideas that are still floating around and being talked about. But thank you for your kind comments.
Commissioner Alexander?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Mr. Johnson, welcome. We are delighted to have you here, and particularly if you did any review of the history of the area that you were being invited to paratroop into, I'm sure you were aware that this is a very charged issue in many ways within this community. I commend you on the composition of the Community Advisory Board. I'm familiar with many of those individuals, and I think you will get a very authentic and unvarnished set of considerations in terms of how they look at this work. I appreciated the fact that you began this by sort of creating a contrast between this effort and the previous one earlier in the decade, in beginning by saying community and that lens of input is a critical success factor for this work, because it is. And I will say, as somebody who is intimately involved in the work in Albina, that when you call people to major transportation projects, although this is not I-5, I understand the difference, but when you call people together, people are in that room for different reasons. If you were to take feedback from residents of Northeast Portland, I don't know that congestion and travel reliability would necessarily work their way up to the top of their issues. Traffic is coming through their neighborhood. They're looking at caps. This is an opportunity for restorative justice in many ways in terms of the disruption that was created for that community. So I think people are there for different reasons. I trust, because of what you bring to this work and because of the people who you surrounded yourself by community, that listening will be instructive. I don't know the history in Washington, the Department of Transportation, as well as I know the history of ODOT. And I will dare say that ODOT has been listening for a number of years. Whether they've been learning is still an open question. And this will be an opportunity to determine whether that listening will translate into a strategy which is reflective of the portfolio of stakeholders who are going to be looking at this work, but equally at whether the body, the bureaucracy, is able to take this input and apply it in an authentic way. So I don't have a path forward other than to say I'm encouraged by your being here. I believe that it is a step in the right direction, and I hope that the major players here have an opportunity to create a history that in 50 years we can look back on with pride in the same way that we look on the last 50 years with shame. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. And I consider myself somewhat a amateur historian of the interstate era. Read a number of books on what has happened, and one of the things that stands out is the impact that the siting of interstates had on minority communities. And Portland is not unique in that. My home city of Detroit, we had a very viable African American community destroyed by the placement of an interstate freeway. And you can go all around the country and see these things. So me bringing that as a informing part of my job is to make sure, once again, that history is not repeated, that folks who are bearing the impacts also will bear benefits. And if that looks like apprenticeships, if that looks like DBE contracts at a higher level or at a higher percentage, those things are all things that we want to put on the table, actionable, measurable things rather than just rhetoric. So my background is construction, and in construction, rhetoric gets you nowhere. It's action that gets things done. So that's what I'm trying to bring to this, to make sure we have actionable things that the community believes is important and things that we can measure and report back to them and say, yes, we are getting those things done. So thank you for your comments.
Mr. Johnson, I won't belabor my comments as I agree with everything that my colleagues have said here. I will just add, I appreciate you bringing forward the reality that this is a nationwide problem in our country, about how these projects have been cited and who they've impacted. It's clear in the time that I've lived here that it's still an open wound for Portlanders and Oregonians, and that the fact that we've gotten to the place where people can acknowledge that and think about how we resolve it, I think is a big move for us and for the region. I'm intrigued by your goals with respect to how the impacts and the benefits will be spread differently this time around. I think that's important. I appreciate the engagement of the community. I'm intrigued by the idea of having more prime contractors on the job. Interesting thought to think about for our own practices at the port. And we'll also say, I hope that there's consideration of beyond the construction itself, and I appreciate that that's what you're responsible for, how we also provide benefits to folks of this bridge that may not have benefited previously and only been impacted negatively. So thank you for your work here.
Well, you're very welcome. I just want to say that the commitment is real. I know there is a deficit of trust between the communities and the DOTs, and the DOTs have deserved that. But what I have seen is that both DOTs are trying to shake off a past history that, once again, was not pretty. And so them committing to bring me here, I think is part of that recognition, and hopefully a part of the reconciliation that DOTs can be instruments for good and instruments for change. So I look forward to the challenges, and once again, I look forward to folks like yourself via Kristen holding me responsible for things that we're committed to. If you see that we're going off the path, call me on it. And like I said, we have a lot of moving parts, but we are committed to those very things that I've talked to you guys about.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure Commissioner Alexander doesn't have a follow-up question or comment. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. We look forward to working with you on this important project. Thank you for coming and speaking with us about it.
You're very welcome. And like I said, I will make myself available in the future as we hit key critical milestones to come back and have conversation with you guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Our next agenda item, I'll call Dan Pippinger to introduce it, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Just a quick shout out to Commissioners Pierce and Saruda for their really great guidance that I have been a recipient of over the past 8 years. I really appreciate that. Also, just a shout out to Mr. Johnson, our previous guest, for parking at PDX. We could use the revenue. I'm very pleased to see that. But today, this item is just a update to you on the mass vaccination point of distribution, or POD as it's called, at the PDX Red Economy lot. It's a partnership with OHSU, the Red Cross, and the Port of Portland. And the Port believes that supporting the vaccination effort is the best way to improve the health of our community and the many workers at the Port facilities, as well as being the pathway to economic recovery for the region. Here to present that update is Steve Nagy, the Interim Director of Aviation Operations, and Nora Yatsov, our Senior Manager of Security and Emergency Management. Steve?
Good morning, Commissioners. We wanted to walk you through what we've been doing here at PDX in support of OHSU since the end of January, so a little over 6 weeks now that we've been in operation. So next slide, please. What we are offering is a drive-through vaccination clinic in our 22-acre Red Economy lot. This partnership developed out of a discussion between the Port and our own Kristen Leonard and her compatriots at OHSU about facilities, access to facilities, and could we become partners in this. Our timeline for this, we actually started this discussion, or those discussions started on January 7th. We had a kind of proof of concept and a red lot selected within 3 or 4 days. We chose a go live date then and gave ourselves a real aggressive timeline to start this. And we were up and running by the 21st with our first go live event on January 21st. So within 2 weeks of just a decision about should we participate, we had put all the logistics and infrastructure in place to allow OHSU to provide the clinical resources, the clinicians, the folks to do the registration and the shot and vaccination. And we opened on our first clinical drive-through clinic on January 21st. Again, as Dan said, and as I know Curtis has said this numerous times, our main goal in this is we're partnering with OHSU because we really believe that vaccination is the economic recovery tool, not just for the Port, but for the entire region. Next slide, please, Steve. So what are we doing right now? We are covering the on-site logistics costs. We will be approaching with OHSU through the Oregon Health Authority for FEMA reimbursement from the federal level. Because this is happening at the Port and it's actually on the aviation side of the Port, we cannot use aviation funds by law for any of this. So we are using the Port's general funds to cover the costs, the upfront costs right now. Again, we will be applying for the state and federal reimbursement through the state for FEMA reimbursement. And I would just really like to call out that this is a really tremendous effort of folks from across the Port. We have our own operations staff on site, our PDX maintenance team supporting this, planning, doing a lot of the site preparation and layout, and Nora will get into that in much more detail in a minute here. Our environmental team, we even have marine operations folks volunteering to be our incident commanders on site. Again, to that point that this really is both a community and a regional benefit for us to participate. We have trained approximately 24 staff to be incident commanders on site, along with the OHSU and Red Cross volunteers, coordinators who are on site when we are open, which is usually for weekends only at this point. And we'll go into a little more detail on that. Next slide, please. So this is a designated drive-through only site operation at this time. The Oregon Convention Center is configured as the indoor walk-up site that OHSU is doing. From the start, our discussions with OHSU and the Red Cross and our partners has been about equity, realizing that the PDX site is a half mile at least walking distance from the nearest public transportation, which would be the MAX line. It really is only set up to be vehicle only, the distance being 22 acres and the distance between the registration and the actual vaccination area was just too great for us to talk and look at any kind of pedestrian option. Looking at with equity of who we are trying to serve, this has been really beneficial for some of our intellectual and developmental disabled communities who were the recipients of some of the first vaccines in the first few weeks. Their caregivers could bring them in their cars and did not have to then get them out and have to walk long distances that you might have to do at something like the convention center. It's also been fantastic for elderly because of that same issue, being able to drive in their car, not have to walk long distance. And it's also been really great for some of the OHSU's patients or just citizens in general who have immunocompromised systems that you don't have to mix. You can stay in your vehicle throughout the entire process. Again, we realize that we are not being able to serve all levels of our community, but really the Oregon Convention Center through OHSU is being set up. There, OHSU is handling the patient registration, and they are handling for those folks that need access to public transportation or that can walk or that are more indoors and can be in a covered environment. The convention center provides that level of service. We provide something different. And between the two, we are trying to reach across and serve all communities as OHSU provides this vaccines. I will switch here now, and Nora will cover some of our logistics of the actual how we are doing this on site. So, Nora?
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for giving us a little bit of time to share our operation with you. I'm going to go into a little bit of the operational details and let you know where we're at to date and how we're looking at moving forward and expanding. But first, just again to clarify what Steve mentioned, we are providing the logistical support on site. OHSU is really running the operation. They are using the Red Cross Volunteers database that they've received from the Red Cross to currently fund or staff the operation with volunteer support. So OHSU is really tasked with determining who's eligible. They have a registration process. It's appointment-based only at this time. There are no walk-ups allowed. And they're working very closely with the governor's guidance and the current phasing. We are assisting with any sort of electrical facility logistics needs that they may need, but they are truly the owner of the operation. Next slide, please. So here, I just wanted to show you the layout. It's because we do have a 22-acre site, it's a fairly large operation, and it's very challenging to get the whole breadth of how we're set up. OHSU has created this really simple rainbow diagram. They have this on their website in addition to a video, so that way when people make their appointments, they really better understand what to expect for their visit to our location. The cars are directed, if you can see on the bottom, they'll come into the roundabout and they will be directed. We have our parking provider, SP Plus, that's doing traffic control outside of the lot. As vehicles are routed in, they follow a path to where they're greeted by OHSU staff, and they confirm the appointment, they confirm the eligibility at this location, and then they are routed through one of 18 different lanes that we have. We are using a ferry system. We feel it works really well for our site and the complexity of the layout. As the vehicles are routed through one of the registration lanes, that's area number 2, where they wait for the registration tents. The registration tents are set up in area number 3, which is red. And OHSU has staff on site that use a secure EPIC system to register individuals. They conduct a quick registration. It takes, depending on how quickly they can communicate with those getting the vaccination, if there's any challenges in communications or documentation, isn't available, they go through a verbal process. They are not requiring ID because there are access issues with that, but they collect information as folks arrive. So they do a quick registration process. Afterwards, the vehicles are sent down a path towards the vaccination tents, and that is all the way to the left in your screen. That's number 4, and we have a series of tents lined up that provide the vaccinations. And once they've completed that, again, that process takes anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes. We're trying to streamline it as much as we can, of course, to expedite it. But they receive their vaccination, and they're directed to the post-monitoring area for either 15 or 30 minutes. It depends on their medical history and any allergy information that's collected at that time. And when they're done, they're on their way. So while the process may be complex, we provide as much of this detailed information. We also assist as people come up to the site. We have our large reader boards that are on top of our roadways that are changed during the event to help people navigate to the Red Economy parking lot. It says OHSU event site, follow the signs to the Red Economy lot. So we're trying to make sure that we communicate as clearly and accurately as possible for those to alleviate any questions or stress or concerns or anxiety that they may have when coming. Next slide, I will share with you really more of the details of our site plan. And I know this is a very busy map, but what you saw here is how it physically is laid out in our Red Economy lot. So just to go into a few of the details, I won't belabor you with everything on here. We have a total of 18 vehicle queuing areas. That's the vehicle staging and waiting area in blue right in the center. This allows us to hold the maximum amount of vehicles in the lot, so that way we can avoid any congestions outside and not impact those patrons coming to the Blue Economy lot or on the frontage road to any of the businesses there. So our goal is to make sure that we have as little impact on the footprint outside of the Red Economy lot. At our current max operations, we have 24 registration stations and 30 vaccination stations. So it's quite a big operation. We do staff it based on the amount of registrations, appointments that are made for that operation, as well as the amount of volunteers that OHSU can ensure that they gather for that date and time. We originally started with generators. As you can imagine, there's probably not a lot of power in a typical parking lot, but we have in the past month built out hard wire electrical to support the needs. We also have a secure Wi-Fi provided by FirstNet for OHSU to run their EPIC system and the alert system, so that way that information that is HIPAA compliant remains secure at all times. So at this point in time, we can hold 1,350 vehicles in this lot to keep them off the road. Next slide, please. In the event that we do have an overflow and we do have a backup and more vehicles than what we can hold in the lot do arrive at the same time, we have a traffic contingency plan that we've created. This will allow us to divert vehicles temporarily from gathering up in the frontage road and around the traffic circle and divert them to the gravel lot that is just west of our site. We can hold an additional 175 vehicles in this area, and the trigger point is if vehicles back up to the stop sign that is just west of the traffic circle. And next I'll talk about where we're at so far with operations. So next slide, please. So to date, I pulled these statistics as of March 1st when I put this together, but I have updated some of the talking points on here. As we've only been operating on weekends, this is primarily due to obviously lack of vaccine availability at this time, as well as relying on a volunteer workforce to ensure that we conduct these operations. We've only had 17 days that we've operated since January 21st that we've started, so it's not a lot of days. Operations for vaccinations in the state of Oregon started on December 16th. So while we haven't operated as many days as they have in the state of Oregon, we've actually made quite a big dent in the availability to provide vaccines. We did have to close during the snow and ice event. We made the decision pretty early on, and we pushed the appointments back to the following week, which is within the timeline for the recommended vaccinations timeframe that was allowed. When we pushed those appointments back, we offered 2 additional days on those following weekends, so that worked out fairly well to accommodate everybody that was delayed on the snow and ice event. We were very happy that we closed it early because we did receive 12.5 inches of snow and I believe 3/4 inch of ice at the airport, and one of the tents actually ended up collapsing that we had to have our vendor put back up. As far as what we've provided to date, up until March 1st, we had provided 35,000 doses at our site alone. And last weekend, we provided a little over 11,300 doses alone in just those 2 days. So to date, as of Sunday, we have provided 46,677 doses at the PDX site. Just to give you an example of how quickly we service the vaccinations, for the period of February 18th through the 21st, we were averaging between 90 and 115 doses every 15 minutes. We believe that we can even make that a little bit faster as we continue to fine-tune our process. We have been averaging about 4,000 doses per day. This includes both first and second doses. And as of last weekend, we were over 5,500 for each day. Statewide, only because we've operated 17 days so far, we're about 3.5% up until March 1st. But if you look at 2 specific operating days, I pulled the dates for February 27th and 28th. The state administered just under 33,000 doses, and our Red Lot site administered just under 8,000 doses. So that's about 24% on a daily basis. So we know we can really help the state with the effort in vaccination if we are able to ramp up. And so that is our goal. And next slide, I will talk a little bit about how we're planning on moving forward with that. So as vaccines become available and OHA expands the phase eligibility as they're doing so at the end of March, we're exploring a lot of different ways that we can help open up vaccinations and ramp up our operations. Currently, the staffing is provided by the pool of Red Cross volunteers as well as OHSU volunteers as well as port staff, but we know that sustaining longer-term operations will need a much broader solution. This includes looking at temporary workforce or other types of staffing models. We did have FEMA on site as well as the incident management team who are exploring and proposing a variety of different staffing models for us. This is a goal to expand to not just 2 days, 3 days a week, but up to 5 days a week and operating 12-hour days, which we're really hoping that is a viable goal for us to implement in the next month or so. We will start expanding operations to 3 days a week towards the end of the month. We're looking forward to that. We are also adding the 1-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We're strictly doing that on Saturday the 13th. We have 4,000 doses of those that we'll be offering. It's our first time we're adding that vaccine to our capability. And then we are also adding capacity in our vaccination, pharmacy, and registration operations, knowing that we can't expand unless we expand those operations. So we are looking at almost doubling our vaccination capacity from 30 to 54. We'll expand our registration from 24 to 36, and our pharmacy operation solutions that we're working on right now. So a lot of work. We're constantly fine-tuning, and we're putting in a lot of effort to make sure that we continue to expand the need and the demand. And as well, we're really looking forward to addressing more eligibility. For those of you that know, frontline workers become eligible on May 1st, so we're hoping that we can partner with OHSU to determine how Port and PDX employees will meet this qualification or where they'll fit within the phasing, and looking forward to be able to expand the opportunity to much of our workforce. And then next slide, please. Finally, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the Port of Portland staff that have been involved in this effort. This isn't a complete list, but I just want to do a quick recognition for everybody that's been involved. We've set this organization up through our Emergency Operations Center. They've coordinated support for this whole operation. They will continue to do so. Our logistics section and our maintenance operations have been outstanding. We've had a lot of work go in from the various port departments. If you recognize some of these names or some of these faces, it's because we have not just operations folks, but fire is involved, marine, planning and development, safety team is involved. We have a lot of great people in this effort. And finally, I also wanted to say a big thank you to Madam President, because she was actually, I had the opportunity to work with her on site on her day as OHSU lead, and I really appreciate your involvement in that day. Any questions?
Thank you, Nora. I appreciated working with you as well, and I will say that you and Steve both are sort of downplaying the immense role that the port and the port staff plays in this. I know from the OHSU side that we know we couldn't do it without you guys. I see from what you presented today that there have been changes in the logistical process just since the time that I worked with you out there, which tells me, as people have told me at OHSU, you say, we say X needs to happen and the port staff make it so, and it seems really magical from our end. I also wanted to just speak briefly about the equity issue. As you mentioned, Nora, I think we, and Steve as well, we've all been concerned about this. I think all three parties involved in the project have been thinking about the equity issues and access to vaccine. And I think we've been working really hard to identify how we can get people out there. I know early on, for example, we worked with SEIU to get home healthcare workers that might not otherwise have been had a relationship with a health system or a doctor's office to come out and with the folks they take care of. And that had a huge impact across. I mean, we literally had people coming from across the state for that. And that was really a fantastic opportunity to reach home health care workers who might not otherwise have had access and who are largely in Oregon still people of color. So I want to shout out both the port staff and the commission for supporting this program, which I think is going to be huge in terms of its impact in recovering from the COVID-19 crisis. And I will cede to Commissioner Nimi.
Thank you, President. And just, it is phenomenal to just hear this work that's happening from a logistics side as well as a healthcare side, and, appreciation for all the healthcare workers who are volunteering as well to get these injections out. I just feel so much more hopeful than I did, just even a few weeks ago, seeing that we're over 1 million vaccinations in Oregon. And the impact that makes and just making our community so much safer. So thank you to everybody that's working on that. I was excited to hear this piece about continuing the program and expanding as vaccines become more available, as well as more people become eligible. Because, as we know, there are so many people working on port properties and at PDX who are Black, Brown, people of color, and need to get vaccinated. I think if there is a way to also integrate into that how we help people get appointments, because it's quite challenging even for people I know who are eligible right now to navigate that system. And so I think if there is a port side where we could assist people who are working on port properties into getting appointments into here, I think that would be really helpful and, help keep people safe and healthy. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McDonald.
I just wanted to applaud Nora, Steve, PDX. I mean, I couldn't be prouder to be part of this commission at this moment. I think your collaboration with OHSU and Red Cross and everyone else, just role models so well, serving our community in its time of need and really making positive contribution to everyone's health, wellness, and economic prosperity, a return to economic prosperity for your region. I can't thank you enough for the difference you're making. And it's going to be thousands of small acts like this that create a flywheel that will eventually return the world to what we used to know. And hopefully we will be stronger going forward because we have had to collaborate across all different kinds of socioeconomic boundaries and barriers and industries to actually fight the pandemic. But I wanted to close with my sincerest thank you to all of you that are out there on PDX Red Lot. I think you're making a fantastic, you're just role models for the nation and the world. Thank you.
You're here. Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you, Steve and Nora, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Let's see, I'm going to call Antoinette Chandler to introduce the final item in this section of our agenda.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. And I'd just like to say happy Women's History Month. And although I have only been at the port for a short time, I too would like to thank Commissioners Pierce and Cerruta for their service to the port. So in early 2016, the port engaged Marsh, global leader in insurance brokerage and risk management, to assist with a comparative analysis between an owner-controlled insurance program, also called OCIP, and a contractor-controlled insurance program, or CCIP. And the primary objectives of this analysis were really to identify the key risk and reward trade-offs between the two programs, and to also ascertain potential cost savings between the two. So in the fall of 2016, the port moved forward to implement the OCIP structure. And this morning, our risk director, Dylan Lazan, will be providing an overview of our OCIP program structure. He's going to provide you a recap of a few of the program's key goals and objectives, review the project safety and claims management process, and then update you on the preliminary financial performance of the program. So with that, it is my pleasure to turn it over to Dylan to provide the update.
Well, thank you, Antoinette, for the introduction, and thank you, commissioners, for providing me the time today to share an update on the owner-controlled insurance program. This is what I think a great story for the port so far to date, and happy to share it with you. Next slide, please. So as Antoinette mentioned, I'll share a brief background on the owner-controlled insurance program, provide you an overview of the structure. We'll talk about some of the key goals and objectives. We'll talk about safety and loss control, claims management and administration. And finally, I'll talk about our financial performance as of today, or as of February, and then we'll finish with key takeaways and sort of next steps. Next slide, please. Great. So again, as Antoinette mentioned, this decision to go forward with an owner-controlled insurance program began back in 2016 with really a deep analysis on comparative analysis between what an owner-controlled insurance program would look like versus allowing the general contractor to procure the insurance and administer that insurance. Really, when we were comparing the two programs, the key levers or things to compare against were, of course, control, as the name indicates, who gets to choose the insurers, as well as some of the safety practices and requirements for subcontractors and contractors to comply with. Other key variables in this decision were, again, costs, as well as incentivizing safety. So who really bears the risk when it comes to injuries and claims. And then finally, sort of the administrative burdens associated with controlling the program. It was in October of 2016 that we did come to a final decision to pursue the OCIP program. That decision was driven primarily through because of the cost savings associated with the owner-controlled insurance program. But we certainly saw some advantages to incentivizing safety, which is a key part of this, as well as some of the other benefits, which I'll talk about here in a couple of slides, related to encouraging small businesses and disadvantaged businesses to participate in this construction program. On this slide as well, you'll see some of the project participants. I won't name all of them here. You can probably see those for yourself. But I will say that without these different groups coming together and coming to an agreement, that we would not be as successful as we are today with this program overall. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you very much. So you can see here there's a graphic illustration of our program structure. It was in 2019, prior to groundbreaking on the Terminal Core redevelopment project, that we did make a decision to move forward with HDI as the primary insurer for our general liability. You can see we have about $150 million in coverage related to our liability associated with this construction project, as well as SAFE Insurance, which is not shown on this slide. They are the primary insurer for our workers' compensation. We chose HDI and SAFE again because they had the lowest net premium costs, as well as a low program maximum cost. So there is some protection for us if losses get out of control or beyond what we had estimated or expected on this project. So we do have a maximum loss number as well. They had competitive terms. Hoffman Skanska agreed to them, and it was acceptable to them. And then we had HDI and SAFE both have very extensive experience in risk engineering and loss handling. And these programs did allow us to get up to $200 million in excess primary program. In addition to the liability coverages you can see here on this graphic, we did purchase separately a builder's risk coverage. This covers the materials and equipment that associated with construction while they are in construction. So we do have a property insurance program that covers all of our buildings and assets at the port, but it does exclude anything under construction. So this builder's risk does provide that coverage for us until the construction is completed. We do have pollution liability associated with the T-Core program for any incidental environmental issues that may arise as a result of construction. And we have the professional liability, what we call an errors and omissions policy to protect against any engineering flaws that may arise. All of these coverages did incept as of April 1st, 2019. That's in line with sort of the beginning of this construction project. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So getting back to some of the goals and objectives and some of our thought in the decision making. This program, because we own the insurance program, we really bear the risk when it comes to safety. So we both benefit if we can control our losses, but poor safety would be borne by the port. So it really does incentivize safety, and that's a really key part of the port is a strong safety program. So we do want to have great safety practices. Having the owner-controlled insurance, again, incentivizes that and really drives safety on site for both the employees, contractors, but as well as members of the public and those traveling through the terminal. We did want to manage construction-wide coverage, so we do have the full range of coverage, as you saw from the previous slide, thanks to this owner-controlled insurance program. Sometimes referred to as the OCIP, so I may refer to this as the OCIP as I go through this presentation. Again, it also allowed us to manage our costs and the construction risk overall. And I think a really important part of purchasing the OCIP program, or us owning this as opposed to allowing the contractor to own the insurance, is it really enhances our participation of certified small businesses and disadvantaged businesses, SBEs and DBEs, to participate in this program. So it allows them to opt in. Since we own the insurance, they can sign up and enroll in our program. We do have some minimum requirements for safety, historical safety, and we do provide advisory services to those subcontractors that maybe have historically had what we would call subpar safety experience. And so we're really providing the tools to the subcontractors and the small businesses so that they can operate safely on site. In addition to expanding the participation of small businesses and disadvantaged businesses as subcontractors, this program also, in our contractual agreement with Marsh, who is the administrator and service provider of the overall program, that Marsh does share a portion, 20% of the premiums that we pay to Marsh does go to the small business or disadvantaged business insurer who helps us with some of our claims administration. That's National Insurance Consulting Incorporated. They were listed on our third slide that did show some of the partners. So we really see two benefits to small businesses, allowing them to opt in and actually perform as subcontractor, but also in the insurance realm and the administration realm where we're sharing some of those premiums. Marsh, being a large global provider, does share those premiums with our local offices here with the small business. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So again, safety is absolutely critical to the performance of the construction program. We hold it near and dear at the heart here at the port. And Hoffman Skanska has been a fantastic partner on this. Every day they do daily safety hazard observations, they do audits, accident investigations, and have been a fantastic partner for safety for us. You can see here we've done a total of 17 in-person safety site visits. I actually think that number is a bit higher, as I did prepare this presentation back in February for this meeting. I think there has been one or two more site visits. Those site visits include a representative from Marsh as the claims administrator. We do have Hoffman Skanska participating in those safety site visits, as well as representatives from the insurer SAFE and our own safety team who's walking the site just to ensure that everything that we do require from a safety perspective is being followed. The safety management practices are certainly comprehensive and they do address potential and actual accidents and incidents that have occurred. We do have a COVID-19 safety plan that was developed as part of this. When we first started this, of course, we had no idea COVID was going to be around or have such an impact on construction and the port as a whole. And so we've really incorporated a lot of those safety plans to address safe working as it relates to this construction project. All personnel have been observed to be wearing the required and appropriate personal protective equipment. So part of these site visits from the insurer, that's what we're looking at. Are we following safe practices? Are we wearing the PPE? Are we doing all the things that are expected? And so far, everything has been great. Traffic control and vehicle access to the site continues to be adequate and well managed. Now, in addition to some of these great things around safety and loss, there have been some benefits that we have achieved that were unexpected. And so, for example, early on into the project, SAFE, the workers' compensation insurer, did offer grants to their insureds to implement COVID-19 risk mitigation initiatives. So we applied for the grant and received $154,000. Again, unexpected from the insurer. We used that money to provide additional shuttle buses as well as some closer parking, which allowed for greater social distancing. We also used that money for additional cleaning measures, supplies, as well as some signage to remind folks to keep their distance and to follow our safety protocols. The insurer as well, sort of as a surprise to us, has been performing background surveys for noise and dust so that we can establish baselines which will aid us in the future if there are any associated claims with sound or dust levels. And SAFE has a really close relationship with Oregon OSHA, and they've been a fantastic intermediary for the port and OSHA leadership for us to really communicate and let them know what's going well. And if we've had any issues, they've been able to use their relationship to really provide the messages that we want or to help share information. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So in terms of claims management, as you can see on one of the bullet points here, as of February 12th, we had 6 workers' compensation claims, 4 of which are still open. We have closed 2 of those claims. So fantastic numbers. Obviously, any injuries are against what we're hoping for here, but we do know things happen from time to time. But the experience so far has been far better than expected. Marsh's workers' compensation claims advocates do audit all open claims every 45 and 60 days in order to evaluate the claims and try to get those that were injured the treatment that they need, but certainly get them back to work and get them healthy. The OSIP manual was created in partnership with our safety team, Marsh and Hoffman Skanska. This OSIP manual does provide all of the claims management and administrative processes, as well as the communication protocols and our expectations as it relates to safety on site. There is an online contractor portal called MRAP. This was a system that was created by Marsh. It's utilized to provide all notices of award, enrollments, payroll, and notice of work completion in real time. So that's one of the ways that we are in communication with the contractors and some contractors and tracking sort of labor hours as well as safety incidents. Again, as of February 12th, the claim history is exceeding what we had expected at the beginning. And Marsh brought on National Insurance Consultants as the SBE, DBE to partner on the T-Corp project. They've been very helpful in some of the day-to-day administration of the insurance. That is one of the overall burdens of an owner-controlled insurance program as relative to the contractor-controlled insurance. But again, this small business partner with an office here in Portland has been very, very helpful in really taking on a lot of that burden for us to help outsource it. We can move to the next slide, please. So in terms of financial performance, when we purchase this insurance, there's really 2 costs. There's a base premium, which is based on our exposure. The exposure is determined by the number of labor hours as well as the overall contract award, so the cost of construction. But in terms of financial performance, the secondary cost associated with the OSIP program is really the claims and the injuries. And so it's the frequency and severity of injuries that are sustained during construction of the T-Corp project that is the key variable in the overall financial success or performance of the OSIP program. As I mentioned in the earlier slide, the current frequency and severity of injuries and claims are far below the projected loss expected at this point in the project's life cycle. So going into this decision, we did estimate what we thought losses would be for the completion of the project, and then we trended those over time, and we are again performing excellent relative to what we had thought we would be today. And we have to commend our safety team and Hoffman Skanska's safety team really for that experience. So based on our current trend and rate, the OSIP program is projected to save the port more than $10 million when compared to the alternative, which was the contractor-controlled insurance option. So fantastic news. I will put the caveat out there. You'll see that in the important note that, completion of the construction project is expected for 2025. So it's still too early or too premature to make any conclusions about the overall financial performance of the OSIP program because, again, it's driven by our claims history, frequency, and experience. But everything that has gone so far has been fantastic. And on to the next slide. So key takeaways and next steps. As I mentioned, it is still too early to draw any concrete conclusions about the performance, but we're very happy with what's happened so far. Clearly, any injuries are terrible for the people that were injured. We certainly want to avoid them. Unfortunately, they are expected, but we've far performed better than that. There are currently no red flags associated with the program and no concerns to note. So we'll continue as we move forward to do the daily inspections and monthly site visits. We'll continue to evaluate and improve our safety and communication policies and protocols through that manual that I discussed. We'll continue the environmental monitoring as it relates to sound and dust so that we can continue to have that baseline, and if things deviate from what we hope or expect on site, that we can make changes to our processes in order to adapt to reduce or mitigate dust and sound levels. I will be doing, as well as our safety and engineering teams, quarterly stewardship updates in partnership with Marsh to assess the performance. And then I will continue to update our executive team on the OSIP performance annually. We did do this meeting with our executive team back in January of 2021. So we're next expected to bring this forward in January 2022. But if any significant changes occur between now and that time, I'll certainly bring it forward on an ad hoc basis. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. I'll certainly open it up to questions that you may have now.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was really thorough, and I appreciate finding additional ways to impact safety for the better, and our commitment to equity in a place where I think most companies don't think about it. Most institutions don't think about how their insurance programs might present a barrier, and I appreciate that the work that has been done there. So super excited to see how it continues over the course of the projects. Do you have any other commissioner who? Okay, thank you very much.
President. Thank you, Madam President.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Our next item is a consent item. As you remember, we discussed the Portland Transportation Improvement Plan at our last meeting and held a public hearing with respect to it. We'll ask if any commissioner wants a presentation of the consent item at this time. Okay, hearing none, I will read the title of the consent item. It is the 2021 Port of Portland Transportation Improvement Plan. And I call for a motion and second for approval of the consent item.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Pam, would you lead us through the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
and Saruda.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our first action item, I will call on Chris Neal to introduce. It is a public improvement contract amendment for our T-Corps project.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and good morning to everybody. On behalf of Vince Granato, I wanted to extend a great big appreciation on your service to both Pierce and Saruda, so thank you for that. Last month, I presented an update on the PDX Next program, and I mentioned that this presentation would be forthcoming this month. So George and I are here for this commission item on T-Corps, which is going to be a amendment for the pre-purchase of elevators and escalators for the project. And also, as I mentioned last month, we're doing a lot of construction in the terminal. I mentioned how many times there's a lot of things going on. And so we're currently on schedule for the closure of the Oregon Market, which is, as you all know, the heart of the terminal, and the start of the demolition in that space in the first week of April. So that is coming very quickly. And then finally, what George will do is brief on the removal and the relocation of the Concourse Corridor Connector and how we plan to reuse it as a passenger bypass around the construction throughout T-Corps. So George, I think that's a long enough intro. Your video is already on, so you're waiting for me to get done talking so you can go. Over to you, sir.
All right, thanks, Chris. Next slide, please. So as Chris mentioned, we're asking for a $9 million approval to amend the Hoffman Skanska contract for building vertical transportation. It's really, that's the idea, is getting the elevators and the escalators coordinated with the rest of the project work and purchasing those a little bit earlier. Next slide, please. So as Chris mentioned, there's just a tremendous amount of construction activity ongoing. We talked about before, the building roof structure has got 390-foot girders that'll be extended. We actually got delivery of the first part of the first girder today to the construction site this morning. So just a lot of work ongoing. But next week we start with demolishing the Concourse Corridor Connector, and I'll go through some of the details around that. The Concourse Corridor Connector was closed in January timeframe. It's intended to be adaptively reused to allow passengers to safely bypass the construction site and just give a better passenger experience. So on the north side, the bypass will go from gate E1 to D3. On the south side, it'll go from gate D1 to just past where the Hollywood Theater is, and the theater is being relocated further down to the west side. And these bypasses will stay in operation really through the entirety of the TCOR construction. Next slide, please. Here's a couple of images. The next two slides will be that Chris has shown last month that shows the current alleyway construction. You'll see this work in the footprint in the alleyway between concourses C and D, and that's in the part of the process to get all of the utilities out of the way of the western expansion. In the center part of the slide, there's a bunch of blue tanks for treatment of some of the waste that's coming out of the groundwater. That's all been moved out of the way to allow room to move the Concourse Corridor Connector. Next slide. So here's an oblique view of that. Just to the right of the Concourse C concession node, you'll see the waste slab, the recycle and waste facility, and that was relocated or built to allow the construction of the new western expansion, and the Concourse Corridor Connector actually goes inboard from that, and I'll show some details of that. Next slide, please. So the connector will be relocated with self-propelled modular transports, SPMTs. We don't need to link on that. Nope, that's unnecessary, Steve. Thanks. I just wanted to show the picture. So, actually seen a little more than I intended on this, but that's okay. So the modules will actually disconnect the Concourse Corridor Connector in two parts. The north part will weigh about 1.8 million pounds. South part weighs about 1.4 million pounds. Mammoets, who's our trade partner in this, is very experienced moving heavy materials, building components, and the like. Recently did the work up in Seattle to move the bridge between their international arrival facilities and their main terminal. Next slide, please. So starting next week, Monday morning, they disconnect the Concourse Connector into two parts, move it into place, and then Tuesday night we'll slide that over about 2 hours around Concourse C, and with the self-propelled mobile transports, put it over to the location you can see next to the south node, and then lift it up over the trash node and put it into place. So it's going to start at about 13 feet elevation, get lifted up to 18 feet, and then drop down to about 10 foot. So it ties in with where the concourses are. Next slide, please. After about a week, the week after, we do the same thing to the other half of the node. So it's picked up, brought down, and then goes around Concourse D, lifted up over the trash node, and put into place. So that by this time in about 2 weeks, they'll be both moved into place. And it'll take another 3 or 4 months to get them fully connected at each end, so that by September, October timeframe, the bypasses will be open. Next slide. So the main portion, I guess, of the presentation here is about the $9 million contract amendment. So we've been back, I think this is the 20th time for commission actions on the project. As Chris mentioned, we are on schedule. Concourse B still on schedule for completion in November timeframe. And then the major portion of this project still continues with with the demolition of the Oregon Market starting in the April timeframe, and we're planning on a completion of the Western expansion November of 23, and the whole project being complete by the middle of 2025. Next slide. So here's a list of the many contract amendments that we brought to Commission for TCOR with the Hoffman-Skanska contract starting from May of 2018. I don't want to go through all these this time because we've done previously, but really the last two biggies, we've got about $230 million approved by Commission in August for the structural package and the building envelope. As I mentioned, some of the girders are being delivered today. The glulam beams holding up the roof are in production and should be starting delivered next month. And then in December, Commission approved almost $250 million project for amendment for demolition. Some of the early MEP and the logistics are current contracts, about $785 million. Next slide. We anticipate being back towards the end of the year with a guaranteed maximum price for the remainder of the project, with the exception maybe of some automatic security lanes and maybe a couple smaller things that'll come in after that. But the main portion of the GMP will be established later this year. Next slide. Overall project budget is holding at $1.65 billion. From December to now, we've used about $10 million of contingency as the design's gotten further developed. We're still maintaining about a 10% contingency level on the overall project. Construction small business participation goals 20%. We're trending about 13.5% to 14% right now, but we anticipate that going up closer to 20% as we get further in the job, because a lot of the plans around our trade partners were associated with bid package F, which is the finishes and the fit out of the Western expansion. The design small business participation is at 10% and tracking to 10% right now. Next slide, please. So far, Commission's approved about $785 million. With this, we'll be at about $794 million contract with the Hoffman-Skanska team. Next slide, please. Thank you. Staff recommends approval of the Executive Director's recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, George, for a very thorough presentation. As always, it's good for us to see what we're spending and what we're approving historically and as we go forward, and also to get a sense of, particularly for those of us who haven't been able to be to the airport in a long time, get a sense of what we're talking about and what it's going to look like. So thank you for that. Do we have any other comments or questions before we have a motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion and second to approve the Executive Director's recommendation.
I move.
Second.
Thank you, Pam.
Commissioners Alexander?
Aye.
Kouprokoumis?
Aye.
Lamb?
Aye.
Levy?
Aye.
McDonald?
Aye.
Nemi?
Aye.
O'Halloran?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
And Saruda?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our final agenda item will be presented by Dan Pimpinger, or introduced by Dan Pimpinger.
Good morning again, Commissioners. This item is to request approval to award a public improvement contract for our parking garages P1 and P2 wayfinding signage. This is really an effort to tie all of the parking garages and the new rental car center together, consistent with the recent signage and wayfinding master plan that the Port completed about 2 years ago. Here to present the recommendation is Alan Dekishan, the project manager. Alan?
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, Commissioners. Just want to thank Commissioners Pierce and Saruda on behalf of the engineering project management team. We have very much appreciated your support and fielding your questions at these presentations over the years. So thank you. Next slide. I am pleased to be with you today to present this request for approval to award a contract to High Point Construction in the amount of approximately $1 million for the parking garages P1 and P2 wayfinding signage replacement project. Next slide, please. As you know, the new P3 long-term garage and rental car center will be coming online later this year. There will be new paths to navigate to P3 and the relocated rental car center. While the P3 and rental car center projects include signage within their footprints, this project will update signage in the north and south pedestrian tunnels and the 8 elevator cores that serve the tunnels. The project also updates signage to conform with our new signage master plan. Part of that plan is to add names and icons to the elevator cores to help customers remember where they parked. Next slide, please. This graphic on the left shows the garage color scheme and the new elevator core names and icons. The graphic on the right shows what the level 6 of the Beaver elevator core will look like in the P2 garage, the long-term garage. Next slide, please. With your approval of this contract, the project will proceed into construction and will complete at the end of next January. Next slide, Steve. The project budget includes $1 million for construction, $260,000 for design, and $475,000 for port staff. The contingency is $173,500 or 10% of the estimated project costs. The project will be funded by the Port Cost Center. Our small business goal was set at 20%. Because High Point Construction is a certified woman-owned business and they have committed to a participation rate of 30%, we're going to be handily exceeding the port's goal. It's also worth noting that High Point is currently working on our site installing electric vehicle charging stations, and last year they completed the replacement of our parking guidance system in the short-term garage. Last slide, please, Steve. Staff requests approval of the Executive Director's recommendation.
Thank you very much. I think I noted both a duck and a beaver there in the wayfinding, so hopefully all University of Oregon and Oregon State folks will be happy to park in their designated area.
A lot of sad Vikings out there, though, I think.
Yeah, probably. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments from the Commission? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion and second to approve the Executive Director's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Pam?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kouprol-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb, Commissioner Lamb, are you on mute? Commissioner Levy?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Nemi?
Aye.
O'Halloran?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
And Saruda?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. The meeting is adjourned. Again, thanks to our colleagues and Commissioners Pierce and Saruda.
Thank you.
Thanks.